Okay, so now we're on the cubic forms. Now if we looked at the sphere, that's one surface. Cone has two surfaces. The cylinder would have 1, 2, 3 surfaces with the base. So cubic, we like to talk about 4 or more surfaces. The other thing about these cubic forms is that they might not just be cubes. I like to classify them as all flat surface and all straight edges. So we're talking about forms that are straight and flat. Now the first form we might try to draw an outline of, I like to call the tetrahedron. It's very easy. It's a 4-sided triangle form. We'll start with a vertical line and then make an arrow that points up, or you could make an arrow that points down, and then you're just enclosing the three-dimensional object by having the baselines meet each other. So that would be a tetrahedron, 4 triangles. If I was looking at a triangular prism instead, I would look at possibly drawing a triangle that points down that's kind of flat, or a triangle that's facing me. And then you could do the diagonal for depth trick, making all things on one side happen on the other. Or you could treat it like a cylinder and bring the corners, instead of curves, down parallel, matching the base. Everything upstairs happens downstairs. You want these lines to be parallel with each other. So that's why I didn't include that space. I would rather get rid of a line than have something opposite on these cubic forms be unparalleled. So this would be triangular prism. Pyramids, I tell kids to start with the idea of a parallelogram. And then find the center of that parallelogram by crossing the edges. If you need to use a ruler to keep it straight, you can do that. But where they come together in the middle would be the center of the top of the pyramid. And then it's just a matter of connecting the top of that pyramid to all 4 corners. If you wanted a transparent pyramid, you would keep all of your lines. If you didn't, you would erase the ones you need to erase. Let's look at that cube. So I'll start with either a rectangle or a square. It doesn't matter, whichever you end up with. I'm going to spend too much time measuring, unless you need to measure because you're putting this cube in a specific place. And then I'm going to go back to the diagonal for depth trick. And these diagonals could either go to a vanishing point, if you know what that is, or you can just do them parallel, meaning always the same distance between the 2 lines. To enclose, everything on one side happens on the other. Turn the corner because that's what the original shape does. And we're going to take still that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 idea. But if the light's shining over here, it's going to hit this edge first. So I'm probably, just to keep it super simple, going to leave this entire side an all 1. And I want corners to change because of values, not because of lines. So if the idea is formed through value instead of line, I'm going to start my number 2 value right here at the corner. And I'll give it into a shape that is the same as what I'm inside of. So if I'm diagonal up here, my value could go in diagonally. If I'm rectangular here, my value could go in rectangularly. Now there are more advanced ways to do this, but this is the keep it super simple for beginning drawers. As I approach my number 2, my value will lighten. And I could use a blending tool at this point if I wanted to. Or I can keep the lines in for texture. If I was more concerned, then I would take better care and time making sure my lines were disappearing in my dark values but more concerned about understanding the concept of how light would move across flat surfaces and show me valued corners instead of lines for corners. So here I'm in that 4 space. So it needs to be darker. I don't want to stop the line movement. So make sure that that line continues to carry. That cast shadow is going to start here on this side. Some kids like to take those rulers and line it up nice and parallel to make sure it sticks out at the right place. The front of that cast shadow is going to line right up with the base of my form, and I'll use a diagonal that's parallel to the diagonal already on my form. If I'm using a perspective point, I would send that diagonal to the vanishing point. Now hopefully, based on this more complicated 6-sided form, you'll be able to figure out how value would work on the other types of cubic forms. Those are our 4 basic forms.